Right, thank you very much, Brother John. Thank you very much for coming out on this very beautiful day. We're going to be thinking about God's classroom. Who can remember sitting in a classroom?
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
Long time ago.
Long time. Who still goes to a classroom? Roham, you're still going to a classroom, aren't you, at school?
That's
Roham has just got grade, what was it, grade 2?
grade 2, yeah.
Grade 2, English?
English, basically English literature, grade 1.
I think Roham deserves a round of applause for his grade 2 English. Yeah, Harley's joining in. Well done, Roham, that's brilliant. Some of us, even though we're getting on a bit, still go to a classroom pretty much every week. And this is the classroom that we go to. Do you recognise this, David?
Yeah.
Well, there we are. So basically, Hilary, Alfie, myself, and David pretty much every week go to this classroom. This is the classroom at Tewkesbury School. And we do the seminars at the classroom. When you go to a classroom, you're going there to learn, aren't you? And there's a teacher and there's a subject. You're supposed to listen. You're supposed to do what Roham's done, which is pass an exam ultimately. But it suddenly occurred to me, because we've been going to this classroom for some time now, at least a year, isn't it? I'd have thought. When you go into the classroom, there's stuff on the walls. And if you think back to the classrooms that you used to go in, those of you where it was a long time ago, do you remember you went in? They weren't blank walls, were they? The teachers would put stuff on the walls, and they were there to help you think about things, weren't they? Not that you often probably did, but they were there. Now, I've got a very able assistant who is demonstrating what's on the walls in the classroom at Tewkesbury School. And here he is. There he is, look. So this is one of the walls in the classroom. And I don't know quite what it's saying, but there's a message there with all these different words if you wanted to spend time looking at it. And David went on and did another demonstration for me. And this is another wall. And every couple of weeks, what's on the wall changes. There's always like a different theme, a different message, and they're actually pretty good messages in this classroom. So the teacher is obviously wanting the kids to think, and to, when they go into the room, to think. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you is that we, in a very sort of similar way, are in God's classroom. Now, I actually think the teacher in the classroom is the greatest teacher that ever lived, because our teacher is Jesus himself. He is the rabbi. He is our master. We're listening to Jesus. I think in this school, the headmaster is God. But I think in God's classroom, just as the teacher puts stuff on the walls for us to think about, I think God has done exactly the same for us. Now, God hasn't given us, pictures on literal walls. What has God given us to consider? What would we say is God's classroom? The world. And I think that's right. In fact, you could even say in God's classroom, it isn't even just the world. It's the entire universe that God has given us to look at and to consider and to think. Now, when you sit in a classroom, it's quite possible to ignore what the teacher's put on the wall, isn't it? Still there, but you can ignore it. But in the same way that God has put all these things around us, you can live your life and ignore it, or you can live your life and look at it. And what I'm going to do now is show you what I think are very astounding, wonderful things that God has put on his wall for us to think about if we want to. Should we do that? So we're going to approach this from the perspective of your own life. So you're living your life, and I'm going to show you what's on the wall that God has given you in your own life. So here we go. Now, most people, I think, start the day by waking up. Is that fair enough? You've been asleep. Who went to sleep last night? Did we all go to sleep? Roham, did you go to sleep last night? It didn't look like you did, to be fair. Let's say, so we all go to sleep, don't we? In the Bible, what does God say that sleep is symbolic of? Death. We know that, so it says here, consider and hear me, O my Lord, my God, lighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. So basically, the Bible says when you go to sleep, that is like being dead. Now, we're not dead, are we, when we sleep? But God says being asleep is like being dead. The reason that God compares sleep to death is because when you're dead, you're not conscious of anything, are you? And time goes, in 8 hours, it goes like a flash, really, doesn't it? Doesn't feel like 8 hours, does it? In fact, there's other verses that say this. So do you remember with Lazarus? And they said, Jesus, Lazarus is dead. And then Jesus said, he's not dead, he's asleep. But he was really dead, but Jesus knew it was like a sleep because he could wake him up. So if actually when we're asleep, it's like we're dead, what is it when we wake up? What's waking up symbolic of, do you think? It's got to be resurrection, hasn't it? If sleep equals death, when we open our eyes in the morning, it is symbolic of resurrection. So we do wake up in the morning and we get up, and this is symbolic of resurrection. So the morning when we wake up is symbolic of resurrection. Now here's a verse, look. Isn't it remarkable that Jesus, when he rose from the dead, it says it was very early on Sunday morning, the women came to the tomb where Jesus's body was laid and Jesus was raised from the dead. It was in the morning. So morning is like resurrection. Isn't it incredible that every 24 hours, God is giving us, if we were to stop and think about it, a sign to all mankind that death is not the end. There will be a resurrection. Wouldn't it be amazing if when we opened our eyes every morning, we thought of resurrection? Rather than thinking, oh, it's another day, I've got to go to work, what we do. What if we had that amazing thought in our mind? Because in God's classroom, he has put that as something in front of us every single solitary day. We also read that when we wake up, it says this, look, many of those that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life. Isn't that exactly what we've just said? We go to sleep, but we're going to be raised from the dead. It's an amazing thought, isn't it? Every 24 hours, God has given us that to think about. It says in Thessalonians chapter 4, those who sleep in Jesus will God bring forth. In other words, God will raise them from the dead. We have a symbolic resurrection every 24 hours. The other thing that you do then, like we've been asleep, we wake up. We then go and open the curtains. By the way, curtains are symbolic. I just haven't got time to tell you what they're symbolic of. But when we open up the curtains, what do we hope to see through the window? The sun. And it's been a struggle, hasn't it, the last few weeks, to be fair, to see the sun. But wasn't it wonderful today to open the curtains and see the sun? What is the sun symbolic of, by the way? Sorry, Janet? Jesus. How do we know that the sun is symbolic of Jesus? Well, we're told in Psalm 30, I don't think that's right. I don't think it is Psalm 13, verse 13. I think that's Malachi chapter 4. Sorry, I've probably got the verse wrong there. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. You see there, it's got this, the word sun as in the ball of fire in the sky. But do you think that's talking about the ball of fire in the sky? When it says, if you fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. Who's that talking about? It's Jesus. So the Son, S-U-N, is symbolic of the Son, S-O-N. So, and isn't that amazing? Because our resurrection in the morning is when the sun appears in the sky. Is that true? So every day, our symbolic resurrection is linked to the sun rising on the earth. And when will the resurrection take place? When the sun actually appears again. Jesus said, of course, I am the light of the world. The greatest light that we have right now in the sky is the sun. There is nothing brighter, is there, than the sun. You're not allowed to look at the sun because it will, if you stare at it, it can blind you. That's how bright the sun is. But hold on a minute. If we wake up in the morning and it's symbolic of resurrection, and if the sun is in the sky and that's symbolic of Jesus's return, what is the day itself therefore symbolic of? The kingdom. Every single solitary daytime is symbolic of the kingdom. Every single day is symbolic of the kingdom. Which is why during the day we should be doing the things that we should be doing in the kingdom. But if the day is symbolic of the kingdom, what is the night therefore symbolic of? The world in which we are right now, the darkness of the world. And actually, when you look at the verses, that's why you read about the darkness of this world in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Does the world, despite the sun today, feel like a dark place? Spiritually, it's dark, isn't it? It's full of wickedness and sin and death and godlessness. But hold on a minute. In the darkness of this world, is there a light that is still shining in the heavens? There is the moon and the stars. They're not as bright, are they, as the sun? But there's still a bit of light in the sky. I've noticed it more living where we live now because there's no street lights. And when there's a full moon, it actually makes a tremendous difference to the light outside. It's still not the sun. But our solar panels generate a tiny, tiny, weeny little bit of electricity from the light of the moon, believe it or not. Whereas when the sun comes out, it's enormous amounts of electricity it can generate. Right. Sorry. No, this is the point. The moon has got no natural light itself, has it? It's just a rock. But it's reflecting the light of the sun onto the moon, into the world. Now, what do you think that might be symbolic of? Us. Right. The moon itself, you know, is symbolic of all of the true Christians coming together to reflect God's light into the world. And we do that by reflecting Jesus. We've got no natural light ourselves, have we? But can we try and reflect Jesus's light into a dark world? Well, yes, we can. In fact, we need to do it perfectly because the sun and the moon are identical in size, despite one being so far greater than the other. God has designed it like that. So we are Jesus isn't saying I'm bigger and better than you. He sees all of us as equals together, but we are reflecting his light into this world. That's why it says the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. So in the kingdom, we will have true light then. At the minute, we're reflective light of Jesus into the world. The other thing is, of course, and John was reading this in Genesis, in every time when God made things, he said there was an evening and then the morning, didn't he? And really that doesn't compute with us because we tend to think of the morning and then the evening being a day, don't we? Because we wake up and the day begins, we go to bed and it's the evening. God says, no, it's the evening first and then the morning. So in Israel, their day starts at about 6 p.m. in the evening. That's when their day begins, 6 p.m. in the evening, because it's the evening and then the morning. And it's the evening and then the morning because we got the darkness of the world first and then the kingdom comes. It isn't the kingdom and then the darkness of the world. It's the darkness and then the kingdom. Janet mentioned the stars. So the moon is the collective brightness of all the meetings and churches, ecclesias around the world. That's what the moon is symbolic of. But the stars are symbolic of each of us individually. We know that because it says in Philippians 2 verse 15, you will shine among them like stars in the sky as you hold firm to the word of life. So as we look out on an evening and we see the moon and we see the stars, instead of seeing the moon and the stars, if you put on what I call godly glasses or spiritual spectacles, suddenly you see the world differently. I don't any longer just see the moon, I see an ecclesia. I don't any longer see the stars, I see myself. I don't any longer wake up in the morning and just think I've woken up. I see resurrection and a new day. I don't any longer just go to bed to sleep. I think this is symbolic of death, and on it and on and on and on it goes. It's hard work to do it, but if every day we put on some godly glasses, they're not real glasses, but supposing these were godly glasses and we put them on, and even for a few minutes each day we did this, suddenly everything feels much more real and God feels closer to you. But that's only the beginning. What you do, by the way, once you've got up and opened the curtains, I think what we tend to think about doing is getting dressed. I mean, there's all sorts of things we might do in the morning, but one of the key things is to get dressed. We are the only creature on planet Earth that gets dressed. No animal wears clothes apart from us. It is illegal for us to walk around naked down the streets. It's absolutely illegal. You would be arrested in Tewkesbury High Street if you walked around without clothes on. And nobody would want to walk around with her because of shame. God said right at the beginning, you will feel shame. And they did feel shame. We get dressed. We put our clothes on. No other creature does. Who are we clothed in according to the Bible? Or should we be clothed in? Jesus. Every single day we put clothes on, we are being told spiritually by God that you have to be covered. In this classroom of 7 billion people that sit in this classroom, the vast majority don't care to, they don't know this. But every time we put clothes on, what we are saying is, God, I have to be covered. I have to be covered. And it says in Galatians 3, verse 27, as many of you who have been baptized into Christ have put on, and some versions say have been clothed in Jesus. So instead of just putting our clothes on in the morning, what we could do is think with godly glasses on or spiritual spectacles. I could think to myself, couldn't I need to be clothed. And my baptism was me being clothed in Jesus. By the way, before you get clothed, what do most people do before they put on clothes in the morning? Wash. A lot of people will have showers. They will wash. So we wash first and then we clothe. Does that ring a bell at all? And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. So we get washed and then we get clothed. We're baptized and God clothes us in Jesus. Every single solitary day, around about 7 billion people have woken up. They've opened the curtains, they've seen the sun, they've got washed and they've got clothed, and lo and behold, they're in God's classroom, but they haven't thought about it. A lot don't know about it because they haven't opened this. But by God's grace and mercy, he has opened our eyes, and we could, with spiritual spectacles on, see this if we wanted to every single day. I walk out the house. Now we've got some grass around, aren't we? Most people have got a garden, got some grass. I see some grass. I could just look at it and think the lawn needs cutting, which it often does. But what could I think if I saw grass, do you think, in the Bible? What's grass symbolic of? Here today and gone tomorrow. Good one. Lois, were you good? Here we go. Look, as for man, his days are as grass, as the flower of the field, so he flourishes. So grass comes up and then grass disappears, doesn't it? I mean, we tend to, with a lawn, keep grass looking okay because we keep chopping it. But if you leave grass, it grows and grows and just dies and gets chopped down. And horses end up eating it, I guess. In James chapter 1, verse 11, it says, the rich are compared to grass. It says the rich flourish and then everything's lost. Why? Because they die ultimately. And what have they taken with them? Not a lot. So you could look at grass and think, yeah, grass looks good to start with, but it's going to wither and it's going to fail. You walk, I mean, we don't have these in our garden, as you can imagine, because I'm always weeding them out. No, I'm just not looking impressed with that. Is there not in all gardens and on all hedgerows and wherever there's grass, there's always these things, isn't there? Weeds, thorns, and thistles. You could just think there's a weed or a thorn or a thistle. Or you could think to yourself, with godly glasses on or spiritual spectacles, there is the curse in front of me. God says, cursed is the ground for your sake, Adam. In sorrow you will eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles will it bring forth to you. So every time we see a thorn and a thistle, we could think nothing, or we could think, there's God giving me a message that the ground at the minute is cursed. But one day the curse will be removed, and so will the thorns and the thistles, and the world will be put right. I could get in my car. I could get on a train. I could go somewhere. I'm now on a motorway. What could I think while I'm traveling on a motorway? What symbolic lesson is there in the Bible about something that sounds a bit like a motorway with a lot of people on it? Got it. Broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Now, we're not driving on the motorway thinking I'm going to die at the end of this journey, but am I on a broad way, and is it full of people all rushing? It is, isn't it? All rushing. hardly anyone thinking of God. They're all rushing to do whatever they want to do. And we could just for a second put on our godly glasses or spiritual spectacles and think, yeah, this is the world at the minute. Thousands, millions of people hurtling along a broad way. And then maybe we get back from work and we find, this is me on my bike the other day at Breeden Hill, and I'm on a little path and there's nobody. There's nobody on this path at all. It's a little tiny winding path. And I could stop just for a second, couldn't I, on my bike and think to myself, here's a little narrow way. And I could, if I wanted to, put some words in my mind and think to myself, but small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few that find it. I could go to work and feel stressed about work. Most people don't really want to work, do they? Given the choice, I'd like to not work. And when you're in work with all the things that are happening around you, could we just stop for a second and think back to what God said at the beginning? In the sweat of your face, you're going to eat bread until you return to the ground. Part of the curse of God at the beginning was you're going to have to work. Now, we don't have the same level of sweat, or at least I don't, in the work that I do, because I'm sat in front of a computer. But there's different ways you can sweat. You can sweat through anxiety and stress or physical labor. So we could think, couldn't we, during our work, well, this is part of what the curse is, and this is what I'm having to go through at the minute, but not forgetting that I'm in the day. And actually, in the day, I need to serve the Lord. In fact, it says in Richard's favorite chapter, 1 Corinthians 15, and the very last verse, we should always be abounding in the work of the Lord, for your labor is not in vain in the Lord. We could think that, couldn't we? Sometimes we go on holiday, if we're fortunate to be able to go on holiday, and here's some pictures of us on holiday, and there's Dusty running around like a crazy thing on the beach. And we could look at that and say, this is a lovely beach, isn't it? It's a lovely sea, lovely sand, blue sky, lovely. Or what we could do is get our godly spectacles and just think, I'm just going to put my godly spectacles on just for a minute. Oh, there we are. Oh, the world looks different now. What is the sea symbolic of in the Bible? Seeing the waves roaring, the nations, as Lucy says. So I could look upon the sea that's crashing with its waves and not just see the waves, but remind myself that God says this is like the nations of the world that are crashing against each other. Is the sea ever crystal clear, beautifully calm? When, by the way, will the sea be as hard as crystal without a ripple on it? Where does it say that, by the way? Revelation. It says in Revelation, when the kingdom's here, the sea will be like crystal, as smooth. There won't be a ripple on it because there will no longer be war. But at the minute, does the sea look like that? No. Yeah, well, it does say that at the very end, but before then it says the sea will be like crystal. So ultimately there will be no more sea symbolically because there'll only be one nation on earth. During the kingdom, there are still separate nations because it says nation will come up year after year to worship. But at the end of the millennium, there won't be separate nations anymore. There'll be one glorious kingdom with God over all. By the way, next to the sea, what do you normally find? And there's a clue on the screen. Sand. What is sand symbolic of? Well, Israel. The offspring. Good one. I will multiply your seed, said to God, as the stars of heaven and as the sand which is by the seashore. So there's the sea crashing around, and right next to the sea of the nations is the seed, the sand, which is the promises that God made. And by the way, and I've mentioned this to you before, they reckon that there's the equivalent number of stars in the sky as numbers of grains of sand on planet Earth. Scientists have tried to calculate, and they've come to the fact that they are very similar in number. What is astounding about that is that God says he has named every star. What is astounding about that is that that's like God naming every individual grain of sand on the entire earth. And what is astounding about that is that we've already said that God says you are like stars. And what he's also said here is that you are like grains of sand, promised seed. And God knows us all intimately and knows our name. Do you know something? He doesn't just know our name, Andy Walton or John Talbot or whatever it is. He knows how we're made. Inside all of us is a DNA code that, if it was written out, would stretch to the moon and back many, many, many times. That's how incredible the code is inside every cell of your body. Do you think God knows what your code is? Or do you think it's just a random thing? Do you think when he puts Abraham back together in the future that God would know Abraham's code, a string of letters effectively that's his own unique design that, if written out, would fill all the books in the world? Of course he does. Could it be that the stars in the sky are spelling out who and what we actually are? We could think about these things. We went on a walk while on holiday, and I took this picture because it made me laugh, because it's this sort of sheep that looks like he's about to give a lecture to everybody. And you could just think, there's a funny sheep. Or what could you think with spiritual spectacles on as we look at some sheep? Yeah. You could think of the Lamb of God. You could also think what? Or we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have everyone turned to his own way. And as you rightly said, Brenda, we could think, behold, the Lamb of God. We've seen little lambs as we walked out of our places, being fields of lambs. And you could just stop, just for a second, put on your godly glasses and think, there's a nice little lamb, but I could think of Jesus, couldn't I? I could, as I walk back from work or back to wherever we're living, look at the house. And instead of just seeing a house, what could I think? What is the house symbolic of? Sorry. You could think of the household of God. You could think of that house that God is building. You yourselves are like living stones that are being built up as a spiritual house. I could look at the front door and not see a front door. I could think to myself, Jesus said, I am the door. The only way I get into my house is through the door. Jesus says, I am the door. All of this takes a bit of effort, because it's still just a door. It's still just a house. It's still just a sea, and it's just the sun. Oh, by the way, of course, I forgot to mention this, you've got the sea and you've got the sand, but what's next to the sand? Land. You got the sea. What did you say? Sand dune. Past the sand dune. Keep going. You've got that. So you've got the nations, you've got the seed, you've got the land. Is that the process that we go through? We come out of the nations, we then become the seed, but ultimately what do we get? The land. It's all there. Maybe one of the greatest things that we can sort of ignore, but it's there in front of us every single solitary day we look in a mirror, is ourselves. Because when we look in a mirror and we see ourselves, and I get a bit shocked every time I look in the mirror, because in my mind, I'm still 18. And then I look in the mirror and I realize that that is not the case. Then I walk away from the mirror and I instantly go back to thinking I still look 18. Then I look in the mirror and I'm back to being old again. And I think it says somewhere, doesn't it? We look in the mirror and forget what we pretty quickly forget what we actually look like. But when we look in the mirror, what are we looking at? A symbolic image of God. God. Now, that might be hard for us to contemplate, but it's true all the same, because it says in Genesis chapter 1, God created man and woman in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female, he created them. When it says we were created in his image, it doesn't just mean from a character point of view, because clearly we're quite adrift from a character perspective. But even though it does mean that ultimately, God himself looks like a human. God himself is not an ethereal bright light of ghostliness with just a power source. God looks like you and me. He has got eyes. He has got arms. He has got legs. Jesus has a father that looks something like him. All fathers look a bit like their sons, or I should say all sons look a bit like their fathers. And there's no difference with Jesus. Jesus isn't sat on the right hand of nobody with a right hand. Jesus is sat on the right hand of somebody with a right hand. Jesus is with his Father. And the reason I'm saying this is that when we look at ourselves, we are made in the image of God. And therefore, doesn't this help explain a little bit? When the Pharisees came to Jesus and said, should we pay tax to Caesar? And Jesus says, show me a coin, if you wouldn't mind, because I haven't got one. So they, yeah, all right, here we are. Here's a coin. And Jesus said, whose image is on the coin? And they looked at it and they said, well, Caesar's image is on this coin. And Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. It's got his image on it. Go and give it back to him. However, it doesn't take long to look at that word image, whose image is on the coin, to get you back to this verse. Whose image are we made in? God's image. Therefore, what should we give back to God? Ourselves, our lives. So in the morning, as we look at ourselves, having woken from the sleep of death and started a new day that's symbolic of the kingdom, having seen the sun in the sky, we could, as we look in the mirror, think, God has made me in his image. And this day, I am going to do my utmost to live like him and his son. What we've looked at today are the building blocks, some of the basic stuff, because it goes on and on and on and on. And you could look at the sky and wonder, why is it blue? And you look in the Bible and you realize why it's blue. You can look at anything pretty much. You can look at the floor, you can look at the ceiling, you can windows, you can look at curtains, you can look at lights, you can look at pretty much anything your eye looks at can be converted with godly glasses or spiritual spectacles into godly meaning. And God is teaching us these lessons in his classroom. This is the ultimate classroom. This isn't a classroom like we go to each week with a few things on the wall. God has put countless millions of things around us. Janet is forever sending me brilliant little things which are looking at the depths of creation. Dogs are symbolic. The next time you stroke a dog, it's symbolic. What's it symbolic of? Go and look it up. Because dogs are symbolic in the Bible, and the way we care and love for dogs is massively important in the Bible. You can see all of it, but it takes effort. I'm not saying every single day you're going to spend every single second with godly spectacles, godly glasses and spiritual spectacles. It takes a lot of work. But even if a couple of minutes a day you think, I'm just going to do that, I'm going to put on my godly glasses and my spiritual spectacles just for a few minutes, you'll be amazed at how close God and his message is to you. Thanks for listening.
Well, if we're not inspired by that, we're not going to be inspired by anything.
No,
Brilliant.
thank you.